Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be continuing our Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray reviews, and we are up to the final chapter in the Dark Knight Trilogy, The Dark Knight Rises. The Dark Knight Rises was released in 2012 and had a budget of $250 million, if you can believe that one. But that was a great investment because it ended up making over $1 billion at the box office. And for me, when this film came out in 2012, I could not wait to see it. I was a huge fan of the two films that came before it. The Dark Knight at the time was my favorite Batman film, so I wanted to see how they closed this trilogy out. But before this film came out, Christopher Nolan really didn't want to make another Batman film, but people really wanted to see the third one, The Dark Knight Rises. But after Heath Ledger died, he didn't really have a way to close out the film. But after David S. Goyer and Jonathan Nolan kind of approached him with a story, with a great way to close this trilogy out, because the way they designed it was we see the beginning of Batman when Batman begins, then we see The Dark Knight, which has Batman, he's already Batman, he's just working at this point, and now in The Dark Knight Rises, we're going to see the end of Batman, the end of Christian Bale's Batman. And not only do we bring Christian Bale back, but we also bring back Michael Caine as Alfred, Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, and then we bring in some new players, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, and Marion Cotillard, who all just worked with Christopher Nolan in 2010's Inception, all come in this movie, all playing different parts, all of them doing a great job, except for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Unfortunately, I do not feel like he's too good in this movie. I also don't really love his character, and then the way we close his character out at the very end of this movie, which, by the way, going forward, this is going to be a full spoiler review, so if you want to skip ahead to the 4K Blu-ray review, you could do that right now, because we got to talk a little bit about Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character and how we close out this film with it being revealed that his real name is Robin.
You should use your full name. I like that name. Robin.
And he's going to be the one taking over the Batman mantle. Essentially, he'll be Robin. He'll be the protector that Gotham City needs, because at the very end of this movie, I know we're jumping all the way to the end, but it's revealed that Batman might have died or he might not have died. And this is again with Christopher Nolan giving us an ambiguous ending, leaving it up to you to interpret it. He gives us hints to both him possibly dying and then him possibly living. I fall into the group that believes that he actually dies at the end of this film because, yes, it is revealed that he did fix the autopilot, but he says to Catwoman, Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, towards the end of this film that there's something wrong with the autopilot, which basically contradicts that scene we see at the very end with Morgan Freeman. So he gives you hints to both ways. Obviously at the very beginning of this movie, Michael Caine says he has these dreams of seeing Bruce and a possible girlfriend or wife happy together at this restaurant. They just nod at each other and leave. And of course, we end up seeing that at the very end of this film where he's with Selena Kyle. So of course, that means that we're going to get this happy ending if that's what you want to believe. Unfortunately, I believe that Batman/Bruce Wayne sacrificed himself for the greater good for Gotham City, completing his mission of protecting Gotham City, because Bruce Wayne, he is a very lost soul. He was never really able to get a full grasp on life ever since his parents died. He's always just been a tragic figure who was the protector of Gotham City, even when Gotham City didn't know he was their protector or savior. He was willing to fall on the sword at the end of The Dark Knight so that Gotham City can have their martyr, have their white knight in Harvey Dent, despite him being the villain. That's why when we open this movie, we find out the Dent Act, which is basically built on the legacy of Harvey Dent and his need and love for justice, despite the fact that he ends up turning into a villain, a very rushed villain at the very end of The Dark Knight. No, we still are propping him up as this martyr, and it's really weighing down on Gary Oldman's Jim Gordon at the beginning of this movie. He's finally going to tell the world at this event, which takes place at Wayne Manor, he's going to tell the world that, you know what? No, the real hero is Batman, not Harvey Dent. He was going to kill my son, but Batman saved the day, fell on the sword, and that's why we haven't seen him in 8 years. And we've also not seen Bruce Wayne in 8 years. He's become a recluse. There's all these rumors that he has these crazy long fingernails.
Is that what they say about me?
It's just that no one ever sees you.
That he's pissing in buckets. But, he's just kind of banged up. He's just not ready to face the world again because, as we know, Bruce Wayne is the mask, whereas Batman, that's where he feels most comfortable, and he's getting that itch to become Batman again. But, of course, Gotham City doesn't need him. There's no crime. But then when Bane shows up, that's it. He's got to face him.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
But he's too weak at this point. That's why he gets his back broken in that incredible sequence in the sewers.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
Where they just drain out all the sound. I love that scene. This movie is filled with great scenes like that. The chase scene, which very much resembles the chase scene from Batman Begins, but I just love how the lights are turning off as he's traveling through that tunnel. It just looks and sounds perfectly, because that's the shining star of this film, is how this movie looks and sounds. This is the best looking and best sounding film in this trilogy by far. That $250 million budget was really put to good use. There's so many great IMAX sequences, including the one that opens this film that many people saw as a preview in in theaters leading up to it, and that's actually where we found out that Bane's voice was way too muffled. I don't know if you guys remember that controversy, but people could not understand what Bane was saying, that they had to go back in and fix the audio. You know, Christopher Nolan, as much as I love the guy, he really wants to make you work to listen to the dialogue in his films. Now, once they fix all that, I do think that the audio mix actually does sound fantastic once they did eventually fix that, because I do think that the dialogue does come in crisp and clear, and I think that it just sounds fantastic. The amazing Hans Zimmer score mixed in here as well. But the film itself kind of becomes a little bit of a mixed bag. I do love the entire beginning of this film and even part of the second act. It's right up until Bruce gets his back broken, and then that's it. Bane takes over the city, and we lock all the cops in the sewers for 5 months, even though 5 months later they come out of the sewers. You know, no one even grew a beard, none of their clothes are dirty. It makes absolutely zero sense in that aspect, and I just think that the pacing of the film just slows down so much here, and there are just numerous plot holes. Like, how does Batman get back in the city when nobody else can get in the city? How does he get around everybody? It makes no sense. I guess you could just chalk that up as, hey, he's Batman, but it's really hard to buy into that, and I used to be really hard on this film for that, not just enjoying the film for what it is, but we're 12 years removed from this, and I really actually appreciate The Dark Knight Rises now. I really enjoy rewatching this film. You know, a lot of that probably is because of the technicals. I enjoy a film that looks and sounds great, and you know, the plot and the story for this movie might kind of drag it down a little bit because you can poke holes everywhere in it, and I did not exactly love the fact that certain aspects happen off screen. Like, you know, one thing about Jim Gordon is he always was a family man, and then we find out at the beginning of this movie he's divorced and he's living alone, and it's just in a quick passing line. You know, I get that he's Bruce Wayne, he's Batman, but he's able to get his back broken, it heals up in this dirty, disgusting prison, and then he's finally able to be the second person to escape this prison. Nobody else except one other person who was a younger child, by the way, and we get that big twist at the end that it turns out that was the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, and that Bane was her protector. And then the way Bane dies by Anne Hathaway shooting the gun on the bat chopper at him, and that's it. He's just dead. He just dies like that. There's no like big ending to this big character, because you know what? At this point, we find out that Bane is just being manipulated himself by Marion Cotillard's character. So unfortunately, we kind of just blow him off at the very end. So I do think that this movie does have some issues in the story and plot, and I do think that the second act really does drag, and you probably could have cut that down a little bit. Instead of this being a 2 hour and 45 minute film, it could have been a 2.5 hour film. And I think a lot of that is just chalked up to the fact that really, I don't think Christopher Nolan had his full heart in this movie. I don't think he really wanted to do it, but so many people asked him to, and then Jonathan Nolan, his brother, and David S. Goyer approached him with this, and they decided, you know what, all right, we'll close out the trilogy. This is how the story should close out, you know, but I just feel like it's a little bit sloppily completed in the story and plot aspect, whereas the film itself still looks and sounds great, and I still really, really enjoy The Dark Knight Rises. It's not the best in the trilogy. Unfortunately, it's the worst of the trilogy, but it is still a good film, and how many trilogies have we seen not be able to stick the landing? This one might not have stuck the landing, but you know what? They landed on their feet, and they just kind of fell forward after, so it really wasn't that bad. It overall still lends itself to a fantastic trilogy. The Dark Knight Trilogy is one of the greatest trilogies of all time, and The Dark Knight Rises, I think, is still a very good film, and if by chance you haven't seen it, I could definitely recommend it. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about this 4K Blu-ray. So we're again going to go into our trusty 3-pack here of Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. We're going to pull out The Dark Knight Rises, and just like the other two, this is a 3-disc set, so you're going to get your 4K Blu-ray, a Blu-ray, and then you're going to get a special features Blu-ray. And the special features, there's not as much looking into the film as compared to like other Nolan movies like Inception or The Dark Knight or even Batman Begins, but the one extra on here, the coup de grace of extras, one of my favorite extras and favorite documentaries of all time. I'm a huge Batman fan. You guys have heard me talk about that numerous times. You know how much I love Batman. And one thing about Batman is his Batmobile. People love the Batmobile. That's one thing always people are talking about. Anytime a new Batman movie is coming out, what's the Batmobile going to look like? And there is a full 1 hour documentary, a great documentary on that special features disc looking at the history of the Batmobile, and I can highly recommend it. It is awesome. I would actually pay money for that documentary, and you just get it on your special features disc. And then you also get them breaking down a lot of the stunts. You get Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan doing interviews, which is really funny because I actually never really realized, but Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan, despite being brothers from Britain, sound nothing alike. Jonathan Nolan sounds like he's right from America. I do not know how they are brothers. They look kind of similar, but Christopher Nolan still has his accent. You know, he's always wearing a suit, whereas Jonathan Nolan, he's wearing a t-shirt. He sounds like he's somewhere from middle America. He does not sound like he's British, but it's really funny watching these interviews. There might not be as many extras as The Dark Knight or even Batman Begins, but I still love all the extras. There is still a solid amount. really nothing worth complaining about. I just think that they kind of didn't give as much information as they did with the other two films, mainly because I truly believe that Christopher Nolan's heart wasn't 100% in this film. I think he wanted to move past the Batman franchise, working on superhero films, and he really wanted to do what he wanted to do, which is pretty much what he's doing now. And he earned it, because the Dark Knight Trilogy is fantastic, but the extras are great. Now, the audio, it is a DTS HD 5.1 because Christopher Nolan does not use Dolby Atmos tracks like we've talked about before, but this DTS HD 5.1 truly blew me away. If you guys saw my Footloose review, you heard me talking about that audio track, and then how right after that I watched The Dark Knight Rises, and that audio track just blew me away. I really do think that this is the best audio track so far in the Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray reviews that we have done other than Oppenheimer. I think that this DTS HD 5.1 track is amazing. It's actually one of the best that I've ever heard. It's well mixed. Everything comes in crisp and clear. It's making great use of all of your channels, plenty of bass, and I was really, really impressed. It was really doing some work. And I mean, this film, you just feel it. You feel it in your chest, how good the audio is, and it just makes this movie feel huge and epic, and that's because it's such a well-mixed audio track, and it just transfers so well to the disc. I have no complaints about this DTS HD 5.1. It truly blew me away. It is a great audio track. Now, the visuals. This time, they're using a lot of IMAX in this film, a lot more than The Dark Knight. Now, he didn't shoot with IMAX cameras on Inception. Now, that film was released in IMAX theaters, but they wasn't shot like that. This film, again, is bringing back the use of the IMAX cameras, so you're going to have those IMAX scenes, like the 6-minute opening scene, which looks incredible, but anytime they use the IMAX cameras, I mean, it looks stunning. It's only HDR10, no Dolby Vision. It's a Warner Brothers release, but it still looks absolutely incredible, those IMAX sequences. It's, of course, going to be a little bit jarring when we cut back to the regular 35mm film scenes once we get the black bars on the top and bottom, and there's also, you know, a slight resolution dip because those IMAX cameras just can capture everything, and it just pops off your screen, but your eyes will adjust pretty quickly, and even those scenes all look fantastic. I mean, the visuals are absolutely stunning. The best that the Dark Knight films have looked are definitely in this film. Again, it's probably because of that $250 million budget, but this 4K Blu-ray came out at the same time as all the other Christopher Nolan films up to that point, and at this point of those 2017 4K Blu-ray releases, this is the best looking. It does have some moments where it might seem a little bit oversaturated. It's a similar issue that we've seen in every Christopher Nolan 4K Blu-ray other than Oppenheimer that we've talked about here in the past. You know, there's certain moments that just look a little bit off, where the skin just looks a little bit unnatural. None of that's in the IMAX scenes. It's only in the 35mm shot scenes. They were working with that certain technology at the time, and it's not a flawless looking 4K Blu-ray, but it does get pretty close, and for a 2017 4K Blu-ray, this one just looks and sounds fantastic. I mean, I can highly recommend The Dark Knight Rises. It's just going to really come down to how do you feel about this film. I know a lot of people to this point are still pretty disappointed with it. They really feel like it's not the best of the Dark Knight trilogy, and it's not, but it's still a very solid film, and I think 12 years since this film came out, we can forgive a lot of the flaws of the film and appreciate The Dark Knight Rises for what it is, which is a very entertaining Batman film. It might not be a top 5 Batman film of all time, but you cannot say that this film is poorly made because it looks and sounds great, and it translates so well to this 4K Blu-ray. And how would I rate this 4K Blu-ray? I gotta be honest, I think it's a really, really good one. 3 discs in here, you know, to have your own special features disc, the Blu-ray disc, and when you compare that Blu-ray to the 4K, you know, the 4K really just brightens things up. You know, we get the return of the film grain in there as well, and I just really think that if you have that Blu-ray, this is the first time I can highly recommend you upgrade that Blu-ray to the 4K Blu-ray, because the 4K Blu-ray really is putting in the work, and it really makes The Dark Knight Rises look and sound fantastic. So I would give this one a score of 9.5 out of 10. I was very impressed with The Dark Knight Rises, and I've got to be honest, I absolutely love that Batmobile documentary that's on the special features disc. That alone really raises it up because it's just so impressive, and if you're a Batman fan, you owe it to yourself. I'm sure you can watch it on YouTube somewhere, but it's packed in here as well, which is just fantastic. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video. Maybe you want to become a channel member where we have 3 different tiers. We have a Friends of the Channel tier, we have a Producers tier. That's where you're going to find John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, Mr. Smelly Potato. We also have a Directors tier, and that's where you're going to find Frank's Media and Reviews. He has a great YouTube channel as well. You guys should really check out. But if you got no money to throw our way, don't worry about it. We just really appreciate you guys checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, why don't you guys get out in those streets and tell your friends about us? And then after you're done doing all that, we'll be seeing you around.